Hi everybody, welcome back to TAG Student Webinars. And today we are joined by Carleton University. So we are heading all the way over to beautiful Canada to find out why you should study in Canada, how you can study in Canada, and all of the wonderful things that come along from your study abroad experience. Today your hosts are obviously THE, and we have the wonderful Jessica Morrow and Akriti Raghu, who is a student currently, and she's actually studying over there at the moment, so you can get all of the first-hand information from her. Right, I'm going to hand this over to your host, and please do ask the questions. We will be here all for the next 40 minutes to an hour, and we'll get to those questions at the very end. So just have a look at the Q&A box in the bottom of your screen there, and we'll get to those at the very end. All right, Jessica, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Jessica Morrow. I'm an International Admissions and Recruitment Officer at Carleton University, also a proud alumni of Carleton. But interestingly enough, I'm not actually home in Canada. I'm coming to you from my hotel room here in Delhi, India. So in India for my first time meeting with students on the ground, it's been a very exciting experience. But over in Canada, we have our Indian student. We've kind of swapped spots here. So Akriti, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Akriti. I'm a third-year international student from India, Mumbai. I currently study psychology. That's my major, and my concentration is in organizational psychology. And I'm also a minor in business. Yeah, and that's all about it.
That's a great start. So I'm going to start with a bit of a formal presentation, and kind of throughout, I'll tap Akriti in with some firsthand experience about how she has managed certain things within her education. So we kind of have a three-part presentation. So first, for those of you who are still kind of researching destinations, I thought we would talk first about kind of studying in Canada. There we go. So as you know, Canada is a very large country, and many different universities, over 100 universities that one can choose from in Canada. So quite a diversity across the country. Just to orient you to where we're located, Akriti and myself, at Carleton University. We are in Ottawa. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but at the bottom of the screen there, Ottawa, Canada, which probably more people are familiar with Toronto. We're about 4 hours or 400 kilometers from Toronto. But Ottawa is the capital city of Canada, and in my opinion, one of the most underrated capital cities in the world. So here's just a picture for no other reason than I think that it's beautiful. And this, I think, is going to be what I'm returning home to when I get back in October. Akriti, how's the weather?
It's getting cold.
Are the trees changing?
Like fall weather.
Fall weather. And that, I think, is kind of a nice thing about Canada, many of the cities, is that we do have 4 distinct seasons that we get to cycle through. So just coming off of our very hot summer, I think in some cases our temperatures might have rivaled some in India, and now cycling into the beautiful fall, and then winter, and then back to spring to do it all over again. This is also just here because I think it's such a beautiful picture. This is an iconic spot in downtown Ottawa where the locks lead the boats into the Ottawa River. Have you been here, Akriti?
Oh yeah, I used to work in Byward, so like they used to be like my walk when I was bored. To be like,
oh, okay. Oh, what a place to have to walk around when you're bored downtown.
I know.
Okay, so let's talk kind of really high level now about why a person might look to Canada. So according to rankings and things like the Global Peace Index, Canada is consistently ranked one of the safest countries in the world, and in fact, second safest in the world for international students. So that alone is a great pull towards Canada. The country itself is also a socially and financially stable country, so you can trust that there won't be any issues there. Strong healthcare, advanced and modern infrastructure. In fact, I just saw that Akriti just wrote a blog post, I think, about accessing healthcare on campus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read it, but I just saw the title. So maybe we can get into that later.
For sure.
And then Canada, too, is an ethically diverse country. So maybe a little known fact, Canada is actually the first country in the whole world to enshrine multiculturalism as a law. So although we have new immigrants coming to Canada every year, Canadians themselves, as you meet them, you will see, will all look different, have different faces, whether they've just come to Canada this year or generations ago. So creating a really interesting and diverse population. So a little bit more about Canadian education now, to ground it back to education. So the level and quality of education in Canada is quite high. And that's primarily because most of our institutions are publicly funded, which I'll talk more about later. Studies in Canada are quite flexible, which might be different than some other markets you might be familiar with, like the UK. So those flexibility in studies comes in that you might be able to switch programs, have interdisciplinary programs, as Akriti does, and we'll talk more about. And then, of course, co-op and employment opportunities. So I'll talk all about that as we go along. So in terms of what our system looks like, if you remember that map I showed you, we have a really geographically huge and diverse population. So we have universities that range from 1,000 students up to 90,000 students. So we have both universities, which are 3 or 4 year degree granting universities, and then colleges, which are primarily issuing things like diplomas. So that flexibility piece, as I was talking about, could look like a double major. So if you're a student who just absolutely loves both history and geography, perhaps you can entertain a double major. You don't have to choose. You can add a minor to your degree. If you start in a certain program and decide it's not quite what you thought, you can change programs. And I think I have a memory. Akriti, did you not change your program from when you applied?
I added a minor. I added change of elements in my program. My major still remains the same.
Okay.
I just chose, I wanted to add something new to it.
So when did you do that in your process?
I did it in my second year.
Okay. And did you access the help of an academic advisor or any supports, or you just found the system easy enough to navigate?
So I did personally go to both my advisor, that is my psychology advisor, and the general advisor, to see which minor complements my degree more. I was both between either a minor in human resource and management or business minor.
Okay.
So after talking to both, I made a decision I wanted to go into a minor in business personally. And I took the help of the advisor. They explained me the steps, and it was basically I who had to do it. And it was so simple. They were like, you just have to log into your profile online and click change of elements, and that's it. And I was like,
yeah,
okay, that was easy.
See, it's so easy, but it's also really reassuring that the folks are there to help you if you're kind of debating through a few things, or you're not sure if the program allows for that there's tons of supports there for to kind of talk it through. And then, yeah, a couple of clicks of the button and you've added a minor, which is pretty cool. And changing your majors is also fairly common. Like I said, I always like to joke, if you ask a Canadian adult how many times they've changed their major, if they say never, they're probably lying because it is somewhat common. And then interdisciplinary courses too, just is the opportunity within your degree to take just other things. So if there is space to take something else that interests you unrelated to what you're studying, then that's possible as well. So why not throw in a Japanese class or an astronomy class along with your psychology courses? Akriti, any fun examples in your first year of just random classes you took for interest?
The fun one in my first year, I would say, was a course in art history. I'd never heard of that. And I got to see paintings and examine them and just give my interpretation of what anything as painting would be. I was like, that is very cool. We just talk about we look at paintings and we talk, okay, there is a window in the background. What do you think would it convey? And I'm like, that is actually so cool.
See, and that's what I think is so exciting, is that there's so many courses, thousands and thousands of courses at a university that you would not have been able to study at high school, right? So you think maybe you want to come in into business. But then you take an art history class and think, whoa, this can be my major. I had no idea. And then you're easily able to switch, relatively easily able to switch your major. Okay, so something else I want to just take a moment to talk about, because it does work slightly different in Canada than it would in places like India. So first, this is the same. Programs like engineering is a direct entry program. So you would apply directly into engineering, pursue your 4-year degree. And then if you want to be a professional engineer, you have 4 years of work experience before you can seek your designation. But a program like medicine does work slightly different. So this would be the plan for medicine, law, pharmacy, physiotherapy, dentistry, all the professions you see there. You'd first be looking at acquiring your undergraduate degree. Now, for most of these fields, what you study actually doesn't really matter. You can apply into medicine from either health sciences, from something in biochemistry, biology. I actually personally know a student who applied to medicine from music. So there really is no restriction on what you study in your undergraduate, but it'll be a combination of both your GPA in your undergraduate and how well you do on the MCAT exam. So that would be the medical school entrance exam. So similarly for law, you can come into any program, whether it be law at the undergraduate level, philosophy, psychology, even sciences, before you write your LSAT and apply into law school. So for all of these, you could just be looking at whatever interests you most at the undergraduate level, and then we worry about those professional programs after. Okay, so a little bit about the application process and how it works in Canada. Now, this is a bit difficult to talk about because it differs by province and by university, really, because education is actually managed by the provinces in Canada and the territories rather than by the federal government. So it'll work differently in Ontario than it does in Alberta, for example. So those deadlines will vary by every university. So I know that doesn't make it easy. So important to check universities' websites, to talk to any supports that you have. So there are typically 2 ways to apply. In Ontario specifically, we do have a common application. It's called the OUAC. So if you are applying for more than three or more universities in the province of Ontario, OUAC is the preferred method because it's kind of one fee and you get the 3 applications. If you are applying only to one school in Ontario and the rest in other provinces, maybe British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, then you can just apply directly to the university of your choice. Alberta also has a common application, Apply Alberta. So again, it's so diverse. It's really important that you just seek support, contact the school directly, or if you are using a counselor or a guide, then they can help you navigate. Okay. So for document submission or just admission requirements, most of your documents will just be submitted online, whether that's through OUAC or Apply Alberta or directly to the university. So that's pretty straightforward there. In terms of what we might be looking for, typically in Canada, we are only looking at your grades. So it's pretty black and white, grades. Now, there are some programs and there may be some universities who might ask for a personal statement or an essay. Programs like music will usually have an audition. Arts programs will have a portfolio, but those are the exception to the rule. The rule typically is just grades. SATs are not a thing of Canada typically, so commonly you won't see any request for an entrance exam. So that should be a bit of a relief for you. Anything, Akriti, that you remember being particularly confusing or worth mentioning about your application process?
I personally applied through like OUAC.
Okay.
So there was one thing which was a little confusing, I remember. It's like OUAC had like a bunch of like things you have to go through, steps and steps of it.
Yeah.
It's not straightforward completely. So like after like selecting my schools and everything, there comes the next thing of like documents. And it was like, okay, and it gives you an option of like WES, which is the World Education Services. And like it says you have to courier your transcripts through to them, and like from there they get it approved and you can do it. And I didn't really research much or didn't ask anybody, and I did send it to them and they kind of declined it, saying like, you don't need it. And I was like, I didn't know that. And later on I reached to like Carleton to ask them like, do I need like a WES approved grades? They're like, no, it's only needed if you're like having a degree in masters and going through that, like engineering,
Yeah.
something to get
I'm
like
hopeful that
grades.
I'm hopeful that they've cleared that up since
Yeah.
you've applied. But yeah, so we don't, that's a good point though. We don't require you to send your transcripts to WES for verification. We do our own verification. So hopefully that's a bit of a cleaner process there. But Akriti, I like what you said, that you said very casually that you reached out to Carleton and we replied with an answer. So I think that is something that you shouldn't shy away from. Contact the universities directly. I can only speak for Carleton, but we do make a very strong effort to get back to students in a reasonable time in order to answer your questions. So hopefully that is everyone's experience. Okay, so we just talked a little bit about the admission requirements. So averages, if you look at any university's website, will usually be listed on the website. So Google is an amazing thing. The internet is an amazing thing. You should be able to find all of these questions or answers to these questions online. Every program you apply for will have certain prerequisite courses. So for example, most BCom, commerce or business programs in Canada will require math. Engineering will always require math, and usually a physics and chemistry. So again, just going on the university websites, looking at what their requirements are and the prerequisite courses. So especially helpful if you're still in class 10 or 11, or as opposed 10, where you can still choose your classes. Good to do that research early. Some schools will require English language proficiency. Now, this might depend on your curriculum. If you are a CBSE school, for example, we don't always ask for English proficiency. Often if you're doing IB or A levels, you likely won't be asked, but that will also differ by every university. So it's hard for me to tell you this is the rule across Canada. But something that I will mention is Indian students are eligible for express processing of their study permit. It's called the Student Direct Stream. With that process, they will ask you for English proficiency. So even if your university doesn't ask for it, you are still probably advised to write the IELTS or the TOEFL or the PTE in order to have the expedited study permit processing. So just a tip. Okay, so in case there are any parents on the line here, funding is always a popular question. So something I'd like to start off talking about is just establishing a budget. Understanding what your budget is really important because it'll help filter the universities and the cities that you might be considering. As demonstrated before, we have universities across the country where tuition costs will vary, cost of living in the cities and provinces will vary. So becoming familiar with that will be a helpful start. Many universities, not all, do have international scholarships or scholarships that international students are equally eligible for. But the idea of the full ride scholarship is not really something that happens much in Canada. It is a rarity. So I just want to manage expectations that full ride scholarships aren't usually something international students can expect. Similarly with financial aid, unless you are a permanent resident or a citizen, financial aid would be something you would seek from your own government or loans from the bank. You wouldn't be able to pursue that through Canada. So another way that students are helping to support their time while studying in Canada is through part-time work. So unrelated to what they're studying, on the study permit, students are allowed legally to work 20 hours a week off campus and unlimited hours on campus. Not that we want you to work that much. We want you to still have a little bit of fun, but it's nice to know that you are able to work and make some of your own spending money so that you're not calling mom and dad every time you want to go for coffee or get a haircut or all of those things. And then during the summer, if you stay, or during the winter break, you can work full time. Now, I know Acrity has really benefited from this, right? You've taken the chance to work part-time. Do you want to tell the folks a little bit about that journey for you?
Okay. So just as a disclaimer, the part-time thing like of 20 hours was kind of lifted around, I would say, in summer. I don't exactly remember when, but it was lifted this year. So we had no restriction on our hours, and that's there till December. So after that, they got to make a decision if they want to stick to that or no. So I personally worked way above 20 hours. But not to say like it totally depended on my school schedule all the time. And my work had to be like, I cannot be overdoing anything because I had school commitments as well. But only in summer, I used to work around 40 hours a week, which is like full time. It's kind of a good way, especially in summer when you have nothing to do. I didn't take summer classes, so I was just free and at home. So I was like, what do I do? I can work most of the time and like save up the money and everything. But last year, I would say before they lifted the restriction, I did used to work less than 20 hours a week. So it used to depend on how many hours I could commit apart from school. But I would definitely say because work can be a little draining at times. So you have to be very particular about your schedule. It's like you have classes from this time to this time. Give yourself some hours to finish your assignments so that you're not going to work straight and coming home and being like, okay, I did not have time to do anything and I have an assignment due in like an hour.
Yeah. That's good advice, because I think it's tempting to want to work and make as much money, but your primary reason for being here is for studies. So students do have to have that self-discipline to prioritize academics. And would you say in working part-time, although not directly related to your degree, do you think you have gained some just practical skills that will make you a better professional when you do graduate? I'm not sure if you had much work experience in India, but what was that experience like for you just starting work?
Okay, so I never actually worked in India. So it's not like a cultural thing where like kids actually work there. So I did start work when I first came here. And when I first came here, it was actually summer. So I had nothing to do. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start work. So it was like, I got like 4 months to honestly take it in and get adjusted to it, which I feel was very beneficial. But I do know like a lot of, you're not technically allowed to come in summer, but I was already a student. So I was allowed to come whenever I wanted to.
I'm not
Like,
reporting you. It's okay.
Yeah, no. I started my like schooling in COVID, so I could not fly here. So the only chance I got to fly here was way after September. So like I was technically allowed to fly in any time after September.
Okay.
But usually for any of you who are going to be coming, you all will be coming in September. So it'll be the next summer for you guys. So I got like 4 months to like take it in, learn how to work and get like the culture and everything, how like even the currency looks like and everything, the coins, what do people call it? And like, because like I never saw like coins for like 25 cents and like 10 cents. Okay.
That's a good point. I never really thought about that. Yeah. So even working something so basic as working with the local currency just helps to become more familiar with your new home and how you interact just in society. And if you get a future job working with money, then you feel more confident being able to give change.
Yeah. And it's more like, even with like working part-time, I feel like you kind of get so adapted to the environment. You meet like more people around you and you're like, okay, and you kind of like learn about their culture more. And like, it's interesting because people are going to talk to you so much, which is so like, it's really sweet to see like the place I work now, people will like try to talk to you forever. And I'm like, it is adorable, but like I do have so many people behind me waiting.
That's too funny.
And it's like everybody will come on, like ask you, oh, what you're doing. And they'll be like, oh, even I did that. And now I'm doing this. And it's like, it's fun. That way, like you actually like kind of even get like ideas of like, oh, that's cool. They did that, their degree.
Yeah.
I have like so many people come up and be like, oh, I'm also a Carleton alumni. I did the same degree as you.
Oh, cool.
Like, that is so
yeah,
sweet.
that's nice. So in addition to learning just basic skills in a part-time job, like customer service, dealing with money. You're also just embedding yourself in Canadian culture, like you said, and learning about other people's experiences, and maybe just in speaking with people so much, learning the slang, practicing your English, refining your ear to how Canadians talk. So lots of huge benefits there. Okay, so staying on the topic of employability, because let's be honest, one of the main reasons we all pursue university degrees is because we hope to get a great job after. So another benefit of the system in Canada is that we do offer a post-graduation work permit, the PGWP, famously known. So this program allows a student, if they followed all the rules, primarily being a full-time student, could be eligible to stay in Canada for up to 3 years when they graduate. So this would be an open work permit, meaning it doesn't matter what you've studied. It could be art or music or engineering or anything in between. You are able to work. It doesn't matter who you work for. You don't have to be sponsored. In fact, you can change companies. You can have a moment of unemployment as you're looking for work. So really open and flexible, but it's just a great way to continue to get that Canadian work experience. And then if you want to pursue permanent residency application, that's a great setup. Or you say, thank you for the experience, Canada. I'm moving on somewhere else. But at that point, you've had a really, good experience. And I say good experience in that you are informed to make a decision about what you want to do next. Okay, so that's definitely a unique feature of the Canadian system. Something else that I think really started in Canada, and we're seeing it pop up more in other countries, but this philosophy of experiential learning. So that really hands-on learning. We see this across universities in Canada, primarily happening through co-op, which I will go into much more depth about, so I won't explain now. But secondly, universities and some programs will have internships, as you're probably familiar. And then for programs that are kind of more in the service industry, not service as in restaurants, but like social work or nursing, we'll see more practicums where you have to get very specific experience with certain populations. Then you would have a practicum, and those usually have a credit assigned to them. So the experiential learning is happening in all different ways, even within the classroom, where you might have a chance to, like Akriti was saying, actually go and see the art, opposed to just looking at it in a textbook. That itself is experiential learning.
And I'll step in for the practicum.
Yeah.
It's like in my degree, also have practicum as well. So psychology also does offer practicum, and you get placed with all these psychological institutions here to gain that experience if you're looking for that particular one.
Okay, so you will do it, or you have?
I am going to be doing it in January.
Okay, do you know where your placement is yet?
Currently talking to people, and
okay, you don't have to share.
Maybe.
Great. Oh, I didn't know that. So thank you for sharing. Okay, I'm going to come back to that one. So now I want to talk even more about co-op, because this is really a uniquely Canadian program that some countries are starting to introduce, but we're really proud of it. And universities across Canada are offering co-op. So what is it? Co-op is the opportunity to gain work experience related to what you are studying. So it's not just work for work. You're not just working in a library or a coffee shop, but it's connected to your studies. It's paid. That's the main difference from a thing like a practicum or an internship, is that co-ops are paid. It is so embedded in kind of Canadian culture that employers around the country actually set aside budget for their co-op students, saying every year we're hiring 5 students and this is our budget, because the expectation is that students are actually contributing in a meaningful way to that employer, so they should be paid for that work. The length of a co-op can vary, but in many programs you can earn up to 16 months of work experience. So that could look different in different programs. So you could look at doing like work, study, typically starting the summer of your second year. Many more tech programs like engineering or computer science will do longer co-ops. So an engineer might actually do a 12-month co-op so that they can really see a full cycle of a project before they then return back to school to finish their degree. So just what an edge to have when you graduate, to have already, a year or a year and a half of work experience. So I always like to say, if I have two students, both have 95% averages, both were really good students, but one is graduating with a year of work experience. I see both resumes. Who am I going to hire? It's an easy bet on the one who has work experience. So I want to just emphasize here the support from co-op staff. So we have a huge office of staff who are working in co-op in various departments and faculties, and they have a few different responsibilities. So one is they're making connections with employers around Ottawa, Canada, and even internationally in some programs, so that when you sign up for your co-op, you go into the portal, you can filter, and you will see employers who are knowingly hiring students. You can also say, hey, I've done my own networking, or I have an auntie who's going to hire me at her office for the summer. Is that okay? And we would help facilitate that. Their other job is to help counsel and coach students on getting ready for their co-op. So perhaps you don't have a resume yet. That's okay. There will be workshops and classes about how to make a professional resume, to practice your interview skills, job search strategies. So all of those key employability skills that are necessary, because again, who cares if you have 95%? If you don't have a resume, you won't get that job. So they're really, really important supports there to help ensure your success in securing a co-op. The other big benefit of co-ops, so yes, you have the experience, but it's also kind of a chance to test drive a career, right? Psychology is so broad. And then you add the minor in business. So, maybe you're thinking, okay, do I want to go into counseling? Do I want to go into human resources? Do I want to go into marketing? Maybe. So you could take each co-op term and work in these different industries so that when you graduate, you have some clarity on the things that you absolutely don't want to do and the things that you actually do want to pursue once you've graduated. And references, it can be difficult for a new graduate when you apply to the job and they say, great, please bring 3 references. And you're like, I'm just a student. I don't know anybody. But now you actually have had bosses who can vouch for how you work. Akriti, I know you haven't done co-op yet, but is it the plan? I know you just mentioned your practicum. Can you do both?
So my practicum is a 4-month from January to April, and my co-op starts in summer the coming year. So currently I'm just doing the co-op 1000. That is a course that is a mandatory before your co-op term. So for my program, I can only start a co-op in the summer of my 3rd year.
Okay, so it differs by program slightly.
Yeah, and I have to do 3 terms only compared to engineers who are supposed to do 4 terms.
That's
what
right.
I know.
Yeah, good. So you're taking co-op 1000, and am I right in that they're kind of coaching you on resume building and interview skills and anything else that have you had any really interesting learnings so far? Are you feeling like you've really nailed the resume?
So far, we do have like a resume thing coming up. Now they've changed it to a form of an assignment where they give you personal feedbacks and everything, because there's so many people, they can be like taking time. So they do have webinars that are coming up in October where they will like host a public session for like building your resume and getting you prepared. So for now, we have like an online course where they've put all the elements of everything they're looking for, which I feel is helpful. Like they're definitely there to answer. We have like a discussion board where they're constantly replying to people with anything and more so. And after like the end of the whole course, they do like have like interview practices if you want to like go and drop in and be like, I want to practice for an upcoming interview or like anything, like just getting prepared. They're there to do that. But like their course is pretty much formed in a way where you're like good to go. Like it's built step by step and everything. And it's like, everything's there. Like whatever you need is just in there. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that's
good.
like nice. It's like one page and you have it all.
Perfect. That's the point, right? Is that we want to set them up for success and really kind of demystify how scary it is to be job searching, but how nice to be able to do it with that support. Imagine you did your degree and graduated, and we're doing this for the first time. So I feel like these students really have a head start on the world of work when they graduate, because, you know, students often ask me like, well, what's the chances of me getting a good job when I graduate? And it's such a hard question to answer because it's so much up to you, right? Are you networking as a student? Did you do co-op? Did you do practicum? Did you take advantage of career services? If you did all of those things, then I can confidently say you will have good success when you graduate. If you did none of that, you just went to class and then you went back to your apartment or your room and did gaming all night, then you probably have less of a good chance of getting a good job. So you really have to take ownership, as Akriti is doing. Okay, so this is just a little bit of a revisit of what we've talked about. So lots of ways to ensure that you are setting yourself up for success when you graduate. Okay, so now I'm excited to pivot to talk a little bit more about Carleton. We've been talking so broadly so far, but I'm going to take a few minutes before we wrap up and talk about Carleton itself. So this is our campus that Akriti and I are so familiar with, maybe not from this angle though. But so all of the buildings within that kind of red dotted line that you can see is the campus. So we describe it as a self-contained campus. It almost in some ways looks like an island. So this means that we aren't dotted throughout downtown. We don't have multiple campuses. We are in this one location. And I like this because it kind of creates a sense of community in a way. There's also a certain element of safety that comes with this because everyone you meet on campus really has a purpose. They're staff or faculty or students. Akriti, I'm interested in kind of your experience with this style of campus or with campus. How do you describe the environment when you're asked?
I personally love our campus. I'm a little biased towards it. Because like when I was picking where I wanted to go for my schools, and like I noticed one thing with like different universities, a lot of them like in other provinces or like even other parts of Ontario have like a separated place. And I was like, especially in Ottawa, comparing both the university options I had, and I was like, I need some place which is like segregated and like just a university campus and not where I'm like running from one building, crossing the highway, and being like to my other class.
Yeah.
Like, I like this. It's like it's separated. It's just university. It's quieter inside. There's like not gonna be like any random person walking in because like what are they gonna do right there?
Right. Yeah.
So I feel it's like
I
more
have the same
safer.
experience.
And it's like it feels like more like a community. It's like you're there. That's it. It's like even when you step out of the place and even go to downtown, like to just roam and everything like that, it feels different. It doesn't feel like, okay, I'm near campus or like this stress, like, oh my God, I have an assignment due. That doesn't
That is coming. Yeah. I had a thought, but I think it might have left me. I'll come back to it. But yeah, so I agree. Oh, but downtown. So downtown is still very accessible. I mean, you hop on transit, you could be downtown in 15 minutes, depending where you're going. So although we are kind of on this segregated campus space, the city is still so accessible. So if we were to extend this picture, you can see a little bit at the top. We do have residential areas around us. We have, you know, shops and coffee shops and a grocery store, all within kind of a reasonable walking or distance or drive to campus as well. So it's not like once you're on campus, you can never leave. That certainly isn't the case either. And then, you know, just look at how much greenery is in this picture and water. This is something too that attracted me to the Carleton campus when I was a student all those years ago. So we have, you can see the Rideau River on one side and then the Rideau Canal on the other, which famously, when it freezes in the winter, is the largest ice skating rink in the world. So Akriti, how are your ice skating skills coming along?
couldn't get to do it last year.
I know.
It was so sad. I was excited. I was like, I'm gonna go skating. But
This winter it'll happen, I'm
it
sure.
didn't freeze because I mean, climate and everything like that.
Yeah, for the first time in history, but we're gonna get back on track this year.
Yeah, but it's so pretty, especially like the river. I personally love it so much. It's like we have like spots to sit around there, and I'm like, it is so beautiful. Like
Yeah,
any
I
student
agree.
I meet, like as a mentor first time, that's the place I take them. I'm like, see
Yeah,
this side of the campus
that's the
first.
best. But as we do know, because I was mentioning freezing, winter is a legitimate thing in Ottawa. So this is just a campus shot. So here you can see a little bit like the distance that's downtown in the background. So you can just get a sense of proximity. It really isn't hours and hours and kilometers away. In fact, on that canal, if you have a bike or you like long walks, you can walk downtown along the canal or skate in the winter. I have a picture. I thought maybe I took it out, but maybe it'll come up later. So speaking of winter, which is what I was getting at. So a very unique feature of the Carleton campus is that every single building is connected by an underground tunnel. So a heated tunnel. So even on days, like as a Canadian, in the middle of winter, if I'm just like, oh, not feeling it today, I can go underground and pop up in whatever building I have a meeting. Akriti, I'm sure you take advantage of the tunnels in the winter or even on a rainy day.
Especially even now also, I find it like so easy. I'm like, I don't have to like cross through the road or something like that. Like it's so easy. I can just run down there.
Yeah, it's true. They're wide, they're bright. So they're, I don't know when people think tunnels, what they imagine, but they are also why Carleton is ranked the #1 most accessible university in the world. So if that was a consideration for you, the tunnels really do help facilitate that level of accessibility as well. Okay, so that was, just that picture there. So let's talk about who now is on this campus. So you'll remember from a slide a while ago, we range in universities from 1,000 to 90,000. Carleton is cushioned right there in the middle with about 32,000 students. So medium size, which I think is the perfect size to have. We're still attracting all-star professors, really good grant funding for research, but still a size that does maintain that sense of community. Of that group, that 32,000, we have about 15% international students that are coming from 150 different countries. So quite a diverse population. And like I said earlier, even the Canadians look diverse as well. So Akriti, hopefully, is that your experience that you've seen, that you're seeing lots of different faces in your classes, different experiences?
Yeah, that's like one of the cool things I saw when I first like started. I'm like, there's gonna be people from every background, no matter even if they're Canadians, they're gonna be probably from a different place. Like they moved here when they were a kid or like maybe some years ago. And it's like, it's really fun to see that. Like I have a friend who moved here. Like she's a Canadian now, but she moved here like years ago, but she's technically not born here. Which is very cool to see. To be like, you're from someplace totally different that I've never been or probably never even heard of before.
Yeah. And I mean, not only does it so people look different, but I think the advantage of that is that they're bringing different perspectives into the classroom. The way that they think about the environment or politics or language will be influenced by their background. So it just makes for really a more interesting experience. So for those wondering, within the Canadian rankings, we are ranked the top 5 comprehensive university in Canada. And just to define comprehensive a little bit means that we do have both undergraduate, master's, and PhD programs. So you could continue all throughout. But undergrads really do benefit from the research being done in their departments by those graduate students and your professors, because your professors might be talking about their interesting research, and in your senior years, you might have a chance to be a research assistant or a teaching assistant as well. Comprehensive also means that we have a wide range of programs. So with 22 degree programs to choose from, and then within those, there are a number of different programs. So you look at arts here, that's where psychology lives. So there's, I think, 30 or something programs within arts. I mentioned earlier, engineering has 13 programs, so under the flag of engineering. So really, something for almost everyone. We do have some niche programs here at Carleton as well, things like architecture, journalism, those are programs that are quite unique and not widely offered across Canada, public affairs as well, media productions, but then also have very strong and growing computer science program, engineering, and BCom, of course. Now the supports, because this all sounds pretty overwhelming, I get it. And Acrity's already kind of introduced some of the supports that we have. So academic supports are helpful just in choosing your classes, deciding on a major and a minor. The academic supports also come in the way of academic mentoring and tutoring that you might get specifically from your department, or through programs like the peer support PASS. What does this stand for, Acrity? I'm blanking.
Oh, so PASS is the peer assisted study session.
Yes. Thank you. Do you want to introduce it?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of programs, basically maybe like first years or second year, offer a program called as PASS. Like it'll be a part of your course. It's not a compulsory thing, but you can go if you want to. There will be a facilitator who will probably be an upper year to you, or even like a master's student, depending on the program. And they are basically guided by those mentors, and they'll be like giving you assignments or like practice papers, or there to like discuss any doubts you have. And it's a very small session because not a lot of people usually show up. So it's like the person will have like a lot of idea about your course. And if you need help, like if you don't understand anything and you're scared to ask your prof in a class full of people, then you can definitely reach out to your past mentor and be like, I need help with this. And they will literally help you out. And they have like every week all the topics that are covered in class. And they give out like papers before like the midterms, like practice papers. Be like, you can come in to pass and solve it, or like they upload the solution key online so you can solve it on your own. And if you have any doubts, you can hop in and like ask them about anything. Like it's a great resource. Like I loved it when I was doing stats because it was kind of complicated for me to understand it. And like they did help out a lot. Like they used to like put up papers, practice questions, or like be like, you want to come in and solve these things with us? We're going to do that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's a great resource that maybe not enough students are taking advantage of, but it is there. And there's similar programs in different programs. So there's one specific to science students, to engineering students, and they do try to target some of those more difficult classes like the stats classes and the math related classes. So lots of academic supports. You're not on your own. We've talked a ton about the employability supports. We do have an Office of International Student Services that's available to support international students, whether it's questions about your study permit or immigration matters.
Okay, you might have a little technical issue there, but Acrity, maybe you can start with answering a couple questions. But it was one or two actually that I think
I do see like
students
the
have
questions up here.
Yeah. So let's start with, what is the best thing about living in Canada? And are there any hidden secrets of things to do?
Okay, she's back. Perfect.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Did your battery cut?
My laptop died. It's plugged in. I mentioned I'm in a hotel room here in Delhi, so perhaps something was happening with my connection. So I'm on my phone now, but I was close to wrapping up. So I think that it was fine timing.
That's okay. I was just asking Acrity a couple questions that have been asked to her. So maybe, Acrity, do you want to give us your overview of what's the best thing about living in Canada? And are there any hidden secrets or anything of things to do?
Perfect. I personally love living here. Like, I would say the best thing, I don't have one thing, as I mentioned. I personally saw for the first time 4 seasons, and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. like trees can honestly change colors. They can be red, pink. And I was like, wow, that is so beautiful. It's not something I just read in textbooks. So I was like, that is one thing. Safety was one of my biggest concerns before moving anywhere. And I was like, Canada is known to be one of the safest countries. And I was like, that's one of the top priorities. And especially picking Ottawa was also like, it is really safe. And like the capital is there, the government is there and everything. So that is one. I love the people. They're so sweet. It's like people always say, oh my God, they're Canadians. They're super sweet. I'm like, that's true. They're going to be really, really sweet to you. And yeah, those are like the few things I really like about the place. I like the whole living situation, like the whole culture, and like how I get to be like really independent. And like every person, I love the fact is like seen as an individual here. So no one's going to be blamed for whatever you do. You're going to take your responsibility, which is one of the really good things about being here. And any hidden spots? Mm, I'd say I can say my favorite spots or like
Yeah.
anything like that. Like,
Yeah, that could work.
it's good question. It's like I would say like the area and like the neighborhood I live in. Like I've not mentioned where, but it's like we have like, especially since it's more near the suburbs, like I have all these like trails near me in my neighborhood, which I feel is so cool. Like literally I walk 10 minutes and I'll be like in a forest patch, and I'm like, I love it. Like I'll have like a walk near, I have a boardwalk near my house, and I'm like, I love living here. And I'm like, I can walk anytime I want into like any place. Like either if I want to just go for a walk, we have like a really nice walk made like by the city. It's like around like a whole pond and everything, and it's like a whole forest around it. I'm like, that is actually so beautiful. And that is one cool fact. Like I heard people saying like, yeah, my neighborhood has this walk. And I'm like, wow, every neighborhood has its own little like cute little walk that you can go on, which I feel is like so cool because I personally love to like walk and like see. That is one thing. Second, I would say like, I mean, everybody knows downtown. So it's like I would leave people to explore it and find your personal spots there. And it's like, apart from that, there are like beaches, a few ones. Like I don't know exactly how to describe where it would be because it's so hard. Like it's probably like closer to like Gatineau facing area, and it's like that particular beach like had like so many like less of a crowd and everything. And I loved that spot of mine. And I love the trails here. It's like you have so many, so many. So those are like one of the few favorite things of mine here.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much. That's really interesting information for students. And how about accommodation? How did you find it coming to obviously a new country and being able to find accommodation? Do you have to live on campus? Can you live off of campus?
Okay, so I personally did not live on campus because I started my first year online because of COVID. So I couldn't do that because I couldn't fly to the country till April, and during my finals, that's when I flew in. And I did not plan on living on campus because I do have family who I live with here. But I do have friends who live off campus, and I feel pretty much most of the options are accessible, even if you're in India right now. Like Facebook would be a great place to find accommodation, and it's not compulsory to live on campus. It's completely your choice, and it's completely if it fits in your budget and if you really want to live on campus. So
and if I can interject with one quick point, though, is that for students who are coming directly from high school as first year students, it is guaranteed to them to live on campus. So we guarantee spots for students. But yes, it's not mandatory if you do have a reason to live off campus, maybe family or friends in the city. But it is kind of reassuring that if you don't have to find an apartment all the way from India, that you do have a spot right on campus. And if it can be afforded, I do think it is a great option. It's a really good way for a student to be supported because they are going to be living amongst other first year students. There's always senior staff who live amongst the senior student staff that live amongst the students, and then professional adult staff that are there as well. So, they're there, the senior students are there to make sure that everyone is having fun, they're having pizza parties and movie nights and things like that, but they're also highly trained to check in on students to help identify if someone is feeling particularly homesick or isolated, or maybe they're struggling with an eating disorder. They can intervene and escalate the student to medical services or counseling, or just checking in and just being a friend as well. So I think if residence is an option, it is a good one for the first year before a student moves off campus. But I'm biased to that.
Of course. Well, it looks like an amazing campus, actually. From listening to everything today, I want to move there. But
Come on.
might have to do a PhD. Who knows?
Yeah, sure.
Let's have a look at some more questions. So we've kind of touched on this already. I mean, how is the social life in Canada? Are people friendly and approachable? I would say yes from all of your conversations.
I mean, I can't speak for all Canadians.
Well, most hopefully are quite friendly. Yeah. How about financial aid? Is there any options of scholarships or anything with Carleton?
So the way that scholarships work at Carleton is we do have an automatic entrance scholarship. So they're only eligible to students who are applying directly from high school, so haven't attended any other post-secondary yet. And they're helpful, not substantial. So starting at the equivalent of 80% from whatever curriculum you're studying, it'll start at $1,000, and then it'll max out at $4,000 the higher your GPA. That is a renewable scholarship. So as long as you keep your grades up at the A- level, you can keep the scholarship. And if one year you lose your scholarship, as some people do, as I might have, you can earn it back when you get your grades back up the following year. There is a second type of scholarship. It's the Prestige Scholarship. This one does require an actual application, and it's for students who are high achieving in the 90% plus range, coupled with extracurriculars as well. And then that would be a slightly more substantial monetary amount.
Right. That's really, really interesting to hear that you can, win that back just in case things do happen. That's really nice to hear. How about a buddy system? Is there a buddy scheme at Carleton or guides to help us settle in from abroad? I think you kind of touched on that.
Yeah, I'll introduce it, but then I'm going to throw it to Akriti. So through my office, we do have a number of student ambassadors, with Akriti being one. That's why she's here today. And you can access all of those students on our website. So I had a slide, but it's easy to remember. Just carleton.ca/international. You scroll down and we have all of these ambassadors. So maybe you want to speak to, we have 2 Indian students, or maybe you rather speak to someone in your program of interest, whether it be computer science or engineering or something else that our Indian students aren't doing. So there is variation there, but there are other programs. I know Akriti is involved in some first-year mentoring, so I'll pass it over to her.
Yeah, so we do offer first-year connections when you do come into university. So you have to sign up for yourself. Like no one's gonna, it's not compulsory that you have to. It's promoted everywhere. You're probably gonna get emails about it. So what that system works like is you do get a mentor who's like an upper year and probably an international student, if you're an international student, and someone who's probably from your program. That's not a guaranteed, but it'll be a guarantee that it's an international student who's going to mentor you as well. So what happens is I get a number of students, probably the maximum is 5. And so I get people from different countries and different majors and everything like that. And I basically mentor them for the first 6 weeks of university, answer any questions they have, and help them out with anything they need. I meet them once a week, and I'm fully accessible through emails all the time. And whenever we meet, we have conversations or any doubts they have, or any services they're looking to take or don't know about. So I find that really good. I took it as a first year. I was a mentee and I had a mentor who used to answer all my crazy questions, to be oh, how do I do this? I cannot connect with the VPN anymore. And they used to pass me to the support and everything. So now the mentees I help them out through the same thing. And if they're from my program, any tips I've had or any experience I've had, I would share it to them, or any offer their support or guidance that are there available, I would refer them through that. And I feel it's a nice way, you have someone there, like for at least the first 6 weeks when you're settling in, to be like guide you around, meet you in person, take you to places. If you don't know where something is on campus, you can totally ask them, and like when you meet, they can take you there. So I feel it's really interesting because like there's one person you at least know before you come in here who's gonna reach out to you and be like, yeah, you were excited to meet you.
Oh,
And
that's
it's
so
like
nice.
we're
That's really
trained
helpful.
in every way, even if the person needs distress support or any emergency, we're trained to fully take care of that and pass it to people who can help them out with it as well.
Nice. That's awesome. That's really nice to hear. Again, it reiterates how friendly the environment really is when you join the campus. And lastly, I mean, I know again you touched on this briefly, Jessica, but how let's see, can I gain advice on best times to apply for Carleton? I know you said it differs with universities, but with you guys?
Tonight, right now. So our application is open. I'm not sure what year the student is in, but the application always opens 1 year in advance of when you hope to study. So for September 2024, the application is open. Our deadline, though, isn't until April 1st. So it's quite a wide window for you to apply, but we do, for most programs, evaluate on a rolling basis. So better to apply sooner rather than later. Why wait? And then you can start the next piece like a study permit. So just to give you a quick sense for students who I'll speak to like a board, like CBSE, for example. Once a student has, we would ask for class 10 and then their pre-boards or midterms. So once we have those, we can evaluate for a conditional offer of admission. And that condition, we have certain cutoffs or grades that we're looking for. So if you meet that grade average, we would say, great, you're in on the condition that with your final board results, you maintain X. And we always allow for a drop in those finals because we know that that's realistic. But that conditional offer is what allows you to apply for your study permit, make the plans to move, and we get your final board results in the summer. We can remove that condition and give you the stamp of approval.
Amazing. All right. Well, I think that's the last kind of question that we have here for today. But seriously, thank you guys. That's been such an informational session. Any last
Good.
words from you, Jessica or Akriti?
I
No?
think
I always
luck.
go ahead. Nothing
Oh, yeah.
more?
Just say like best of luck and make your decision on what you actually like the place you really feel called to and really like that's what I did. I chose all the pros and cons of everything. Do that, and what feels the best for you, go for it.
You took the words right out of my mouth, because the last piece of advice I always leave students with is that when you're looking at school in Canada, it is very much about fit. Because as I mentioned, the quality of education is so high that you can trust you're going to get a good education no matter where you go. So it's good to reflect on where you want to be. Yes, you're studying, but this is also going to be your home for 4+ years, right? So if you are a person who wants easy access to trails, then think about that. If you're a person who wants to be able to go for dinner at midnight and love the hustle and bustle and the traffic, then that's a different city, and I want you to be there. So just know what you want and find the best fit for you. So do your research. And that's it. So thank you so much for hosting us and for having us here, everyone. Do reach out if you have any questions. Happy to continue the conversation offline.
Much for your support today and everything that you have given us. Really, it's been absolutely brilliant. I'm gonna close off now and say that we will be reaching out to those who registered, so do not fear if you didn't get a chance to watch us live. We will be able to reach out to you, and Jessica will be in touch from Carleton very soon. And yeah, we'll see you on the next webinar, guys. So thank you for joining, and have a great evening or day wherever you are. All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.